The Suez Canal is still there, but some of the world's biggest ships are avoiding it anyway. They are sailing around Africa instead, not because the shortcut disappeared, because trust disappeared first. That is the strange part of this crisis. The route on the map still looks open. The canal still connects the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. The shortcut between Asia and Europe still exists. But for many shipping companies, existence is not enough anymore. A route is only useful if it can be trusted. And once that trust breaks, the map stops being the system. The system becomes risk. It becomes insurance, it becomes schedules, contracts, fuel, ports, and promises. This is why a ship can choose the longer route, not because distance suddenly became cheaper, but because uncertainty became more expensive. And that single change can rewrite the economics of an entire voyage. A container ship leaving Asia for Europe has a simple choice on paper. It can pass through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, or it can swing south around the Cape of Good Hope. One route is shorter. The other route is heavier, slower, and more expensive. But when the shorter route feels unstable, companies stop asking only one question. They no longer ask, which route is fastest? They ask, which route can survive the journey? That is where the Red Sea crisis becomes bigger than a shipping story. It becomes a test of modern globalization. Because global trade does not just depend on factories producing goods. It depends on movement staying predictable. A phone made in Asia has to move. A car part has to move. A container of clothing has to move. Fuel, chemicals, machinery, furniture, electronics, and food inputs all have to move. And the world has spent decades building around the assumption that movement will be reliable. Not perfect, not free, but reliable enough to plan around. That planning is what makes the modern shelf look effortless. A product appears in a store, and the route behind it disappears. But the route was always part of the price. The Suez route became one of the great shortcuts inside that assumption. It cuts away the long journey around Africa. It connects Asian production with European markets through a narrow maritime corridor. It lets shipping schedules work with less distance, less fuel, and less time. That is the visible benefit. But the invisible benefit is confidence. A company can promise delivery because the route usually works. A port can plan cranes because vessels usually arrive close to schedule. A warehouse can keep lean inventory because containers usually keep moving. A retailer can sell products because the supply chain usually stays quiet. Most people never see this confidence. They only see the product on the shelf. They see the package arriving at the warehouse. They see the delivery date on a screen. They do not see the corridor that made that date believable. But before that product arrives, a chain of trust has already worked. The route was trusted, the ship was insured, the schedule was accepted, the cargo was financed, the delivery window was promised. Then the risk changed. And when risk changes at sea, the decision does not stay at sea. It moves through offices, dashboards, contracts, and cost models. Shipping executives look at safety. Insurers look at exposure. Customers look at delays. Ports look at congestion. Fuel planners look at longer voyages. Logistics teams look at every container already promised to someone. And every participant starts asking the same hidden question. Can this route still be relied on? That question is more powerful than it looks. Because shipping is not like taking a different street across town. A container ship is not flexible in the way a car is flexible. It carries huge volumes of cargo across fixed commercial schedules. It moves through booked port slots and planned canal passages. It burns fuel at massive scale. It operates with crews, insurance documents, cargo obligations, and customer penalties. It has customers waiting before it even reaches the next port. A small route decision can become a large financial machine. And the Africa Detour proves it. When ships avoid the Red Sea, they do not just add a line on a map. They add days, they add distance, they add fuel, They add uncertainty. They add pressure to crews and schedules. They add more moving parts to a system already built around timing. And they remove capacity from the global fleet without removing a single ship. That is the part most people miss. At first, the crisis looks like a route problem. A ship was supposed to go through one corridor. Now it goes around another coastline. The map makes it look simple, but shipping does not measure pain only in miles. It measures pain in time. If the same vessel needs longer to complete the same journey, it carries less cargo over time. The ship still exists. The containers still exist. The company still owns the vessel. But the loop gets longer. And a longer loop means fewer completed trips across the same calendar. That is the midpoint of the crisis. The real damage is not just the detour. The real damage is lost efficiency. A ship trapped in a longer cycle becomes less productive. A fleet trapped in longer cycles becomes effectively smaller. The world may see the same number of ships on tracking screens, but commercially, those ships are suddenly doing less work. And a smaller, effective fleet puts pressure on the entire market. This is where the shortcut begins turning into a cost machine. This is why shipping companies watch more than the water. They watch risk notices. They watch insurance markets. They watch port rotations. They watch customer deadlines. They watch competitors making the same choice. Because one company rerouting is a decision. Many companies rerouting becomes a market signal. And once that signal appears, everyone else has to respond. A manufacturer cannot ignore it. A retailer cannot ignore it. A logistics manager cannot ignore it. Even a company with no ships of its own has to adjust. Because its goods may be inside someone else's container. Its production schedule may depend on someone else's vessel. Its customer promise may depend on a route it does not control. That is the hidden dependency. Modern companies can outsource shipping. They cannot outsource the consequences of delayed movement. The invoice may arrive later, but the pressure begins immediately. Freight rates can rise because space becomes tighter. Schedules can break because vessels arrive out of position. Ports can see waves of delayed arrivals instead of smooth flows. Importers can miss delivery windows. Exporters can face new booking pressure. Companies that depend on timing start carrying more inventory. Factories may wait longer for components that were supposed to arrive predictably. Retailers may order earlier because the calendar no longer feels safe. And every extra buffer costs money. The cost does not arrive in one dramatic moment. It spreads quietly. It moves into contracts. It moves into warehouse planning. It moves into fuel bills. It moves into insurance premiums. It moves into shipping rates. It moves into staff meetings where planners start adding more safety margin. It moves into the hidden cost of uncertainty. That is why the Red Sea crisis matters even to people far from the Red Sea. The detour may begin with a vessel in the Indian Ocean, but the consequence can end inside a European warehouse, or inside a factory waiting for parts, or inside a retailer trying to plan a season, or inside a company explaining why delivery dates changed, or inside a logistics dashboard showing a delay that did not exist before. The further the route bends, the more the system has to bend with it. And the bend is not equal for everyone. Large shipping companies may have more options. Large customers may negotiate better terms. Smaller importers may have less leverage. Some cargo can absorb delay. Other cargo cannot. Some companies can pay for reliability. Others have to accept what the market gives them. That imbalance is part of the pressure. A detour is not just a route change. It is a sorting mechanism for who can absorb uncertainty. This is how a maritime choke point becomes business pressure. It does not need to stop every ship. It only needs to make enough ships hesitate. Because hesitation changes pricing. Hesitation changes planning. Hesitation changes behavior. And once behavior changes, the crisis no longer belongs only to the route. It belongs to the whole network built around the route. This is where insurance becomes one of the hidden levers. A risky route is not only a question for captains, it is a question for underwriters, brokers, financiers, and cargo owners. If a transit becomes more dangerous, the price of risk can change. If the price of risk changes, the economics of the route changes. And if the economics changes enough, the long route starts looking rational. Not good, not efficient, but rational. That is the cold logic behind the Africa detour. It is not panic, it is calculation. Companies compare danger, delay, insurance, fuel, reputation, and contract exposure. They look at the vessel, they look at the cargo, they look at the crew, they look at the customer promise attached to every container. Then they choose the route that protects the business, even when that route makes the whole system slower. The result is a strange contradiction. The world wants faster trade, but risk forces slower trade. The world wants lean supply chains, but uncertainty forces thicker buffers. The world wants cheap movement, but fragile routes make movement expensive. The world built globalization around shortcuts. Now, those shortcuts have to be defended by trust. And the most important part is that none of this requires a full closure. The Suez Canal does not need to vanish. The Red Sea route does not need to become impossible. It only needs to become uncertain enough that major companies plan around it. That is a much quieter form of disruption, and it is harder to reverse. A blocked canal can reopen. A delayed ship can eventually arrive. A freight spike can eventually ease. But trust is different. Trust returns slowly because companies remember what failed. They remember the route that stopped being reliable. They remember the customers who complained. They remember the costs they absorbed. They remember the meetings where contingency plans became real. They remember how quickly a normal route became a boardroom problem. And once those memories enter corporate planning, the world changes shape. Supply chains become less elegant, routes become less automatic. Inventory becomes less lean. Insurance becomes more central. Logistics teams become more powerful. Corporate planners begin asking what other shortcuts might become fragile. And cheap movement becomes something companies no longer take for granted. This is the deeper reveal inside the Red Sea crisis. And this is why the Africa route is more than a detour. It is a stress test. It shows which companies built flexibility into their supply chains. It shows which ports can handle vessels arriving out of rhythm. It shows which customers can tolerate late cargo. It shows which contracts were written for a stable world. And it shows how much of global trade depends on confidence staying invisible. When confidence is strong, nobody notices it. When confidence breaks, everyone starts pricing it. Globalization was never just about finding the cheapest place to make something. It was about trusting that the thing could move afterward. A factory only matters if its output can reach customers. A port only matters if ships can enter and leave predictably. A trade route only matters if companies believe it will keep working. When that belief weakens, the cost of the world rises. Not always visibly, not always immediately, but structurally. That is why reliable movement is not a background detail. It is one of the foundations of modern economic life. The Africa route shows what happens when reliability becomes a premium product. The same cargo still needs to move. The same consumers still expect goods. The same companies still need parts. But the system now has to buy certainty in a more uncertain world. It buys it with extra fuel. It buys it with longer schedules. It buys it with more inventory. It buys it with higher insurance. It buys it with slower rotation across the fleet. It buys it with backup plans that used to seem unnecessary. And every one of those purchases makes trade heavier. That is why the map is misleading. The red point near the Red Sea looks small. The curved route around Africa looks like one simple alternative. But the real crisis is not the curve. The real crisis is what the curve does to time. Time is the hidden currency of shipping. Lose time, and you lose capacity. Lose capacity, and you create pressure. Create pressure, and costs start moving through the chain. That chain does not stop at the port. It reaches companies, it reaches prices. It reaches planning, it reaches insurance documents, procurement teams, and warehouse shelves. It reaches the quiet assumptions behind modern life. The shortcut is still there. But the world has now seen that a shortcut can disappear from planning before it disappears from the map. And once that happens, every company using that shortcut has to think differently. Not just about this voyage, not just about this crisis, but about the next route that stops being trusted. That is the world being built around the Africa detour. A world where distance matters again. A world where insurance matters more. A world where reliable movement becomes a strategic advantage. A world where the cheapest route is not always the route companies choose. And a world where one narrow route can make global trade slower without ever fully closing.